Hey guys, welcome to NIJ Junction. This is Priyanka Deo, and today we are here with Mr. Ankur Sharma, who is the chairman of Ekjut Jammu. Mr. Sharma, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your organization does and the work that you have done?
We have been fighting here in Jammu on ideological issues, most important being that the state of Jammu and Kashmir within the secular territory of India is a theocratic state. In fact, now it was a theocratic state because the constitutional provisions which were used for creating this state as a theocracy, we were fighting against those fundamental things, and in fact those provisions have gone now as well. Article 370 and 35A I am talking about. But more importantly, by the time we were fighting against Article 35A and 370 in the Supreme Court, we were fighting against the symptoms of a Muslim state in Jammu and Kashmir. So we consider Jammu and Kashmir as a Islamic state, as a Muslim state, as a theocracy created and protected by the state of India through Article 370, 35A, fraud, census and communal delimitation. It had its many of the symptoms. I think we will talk about those symptoms in detail probably in the later phase of the interview, but as a headline I will tell you that we were fighting primarily against the demographic invasion. The demographic invasion was state sponsored demographic invasion and non-Muslim lands in Jammu province. In fact, the majority population in Jammu province is of non-Muslims. So they were being looted away by a particular community with state support and with state intervention. So at legislative level what the state does, we were opposing it. At executive level what the state did, we opposed it. We took the help of courts also, we took it to the people also, we led a mass movement at times, you see, and then again the Rasana case happened, and that was also a symptom of how Islamic state operates against.
And can you tell the audience, perhaps some people are not familiar with that case, can you just give a brief synopsis?
Yeah, but Rasana, if you speak to people who really understand the ideological perspective of what is going on in Kashmir or what was going on in Kashmir, they will tell you that it was a full-fledged conspiracy involving not only the Islamic State of Jammu and Kashmir, but also ISI and foreign powers. So again, Rasana is a forest area. It is a small village comprising of only 13 families surrounded by forest area. Then adjoining to this you had this infiltration route, a traditional infiltration route from where terrorists would sneak in directly from Pakistan. So the idea was to capture the forests as they captured in Bhattindi area of Jammu and so many areas of different towns in the Jammu province. So that was the idea. In fact, they had done the recce, and you see people with teams, big organizations had come earlier to purchase lands there with state support. That didn't happen, and a conspiracy was hatched, and Mehbooba Mufti, being the chief minister of the state, led the campaign, and we fought against that case also. That was some minor nomadic girl was murdered and raped. That was the story that was cooked up. We also contested the case in High Court also, in trial also. I was a part of the trial also. Now it is pending in High Court, and everybody is laughing at the judgment and the way the judgment has been passed. There is no evidence, nothing, everything is cooked up. But the judge was also probably under the media pressure, and this is the problem with the lower judiciary. If you read the judgment, it is a flawed judgment, it is a laughable judgment, it is a bad judgment. In fact, one of the accused who was earlier being you see discussed by the crime branch and even by the chief minister as the prime accused, he has been let off by the court, and the kind of evidence on the basis of which others have been convicted, I say it is laughable, and it's obituary of the lower Indian judiciary. If you read that judgment clearly explains the state of affairs, that is, you see, legal affairs or the justice delivery system at the grassroots levels. So these were all the symptoms of how these people were operating, how the state apparatus was operating, and the empowering provisions were Article 370 and 35A, which obviously now have gone. But I say that our organization also has a public stand that it is only the de jure theocracy Islamic state that has gone. The de facto Islamic state still exists, and we have to fight against the de facto Islamic and the Muslim state.
Which is harder to
yes,
fight.
of course, because it's at the psychological level, it's at the level of formulations, policies and demographic invasion that we talk about of a particular community by state, by legislating laws through states, but that has to be reversed. And in fact, what happened in Kashmir, the genocide, first of all, the government of India has to recognize that whatever happened in Kashmir was a genocide, and its reversal has to be done. Unless these things are done, I do not think merely abrogation of 370 and 35A will pave the way for things that we have thought of. I think we will have to also fight the de facto Islamic state. I think our organization at the ideological level has been fighting this from so many years now, And abrogation of 370 and 35A, when the Prime Minister said and when the Home Minister also said, is a promotion of terrorism and separatism, I think they took the narrative from the people who were fighting here in Jammu. Earlier it was development, it prevents development, entry of people. But this perspective, this narrative was given by the people of Jammu province who were facing these problems in J&K. And I think that narrative has been picked up. In the first term, they could not understand probably the import of 370 and 35A from the ideological point of view. So, in the second phase probably they understood it and they abrogated it, and we are very happy that they abrogated for these reasons.
Now, when we are talking about building this narrative, right, and the importance of building this narrative, what is the importance of the world knowing this narrative, not just India knowing this narrative or just Asia knowing this narrative?
No, it is very important because we are talking about subversion of democratic systems. Now, in the entire world, if you go to United Nations, I mean, the only consensus is that democracy may not be the best form of governance, but it is only the available best form of governance. So, I mean, a majority of the nations are democratic nations. Even those nations which are not democratic, we don't talk about that, but those nations which are democratic, I mean, this jihadi tendencies or the totalitarian regime's mentality of entering into the democratic spaces and subverting the democracies from within is very dangerous. Jammu and Kashmir is a textbook example of the fact that as to how Islamic totalitarian mindsets and regimes enter your democratic spaces, use your constitutional freedoms, subvert from within, and then they wreak havoc and destroy democracy. In the name of freedom, they take freedom and then they kill freedom for everybody else. For instance, in Jammu and Kashmir, non-Muslims were minority community here, and you know that the Constitution of India recognizes minorities under chapter 3 and article 29 and 30, linguistic and religious minorities. For them it guarantees certain fundamental rights. In Jammu and Kashmir, the non-Muslims who were minorities, they were denied fundamental rights for the state of J&K for the long 70 years. I went to the Supreme Court, fought case for 2 long years, where the state of J&K filed an affidavit saying that this is a Muslim majority state, and Muslims being majority, all the 70% according to the census of 2011, 69 or 70%, although they are getting minority benefits, we cannot change this system because this is a sensitive state. So, which means there is a clear admission of the state before the apex court that this is a Muslim majority state, non-Muslims will not get their fundamental rights here. So, I think this narrative has to be understood by the entire nation, not only the nation but by the entire world, because these totalitarian regimes are using these subversive tactics to enter democracies, to destroy democracies. So, in the interest of democracy and constitutional freedoms, we need to take certain steps by which India as a nation, Indian state as a political entity, and the entire world and the supranational institutions also do understand the scope of the problem that we were facing here in Jammu and Kashmir. And in this background, they should try to understand what Article 370 and 35A symbolized.
Now, besides the government of India building this narrative, not building it, I would say, but making people more informed of this narrative, understanding this narrative, as you were saying, what can citizens do?
I mean, citizens can obviously create awareness and support government of India in its decision. Article 370 and 35A were conveyor belts for jihadi maneuvers in J&K. So, using Article 370 and 35A, they had taken over this institution of our legislative assembly, and they were using it for communal reasons. In fact, the entire state apparatus was communal here. So, the government of India has recognized, but then I think more needs to be done. The government of India also has to take certain steps by which it can show to the world that the de facto Muslim state also exists, and we are also dismantling this. For instance, how can you have a law in a state where state lands are being given away by the state itself, rather instead of being retrieved back, they are being given away to a particular community in a particular region. Roshni Act I am talking about, J&K State Lands Vesting of Ownership to the Occupants Act. So, I had to challenge this act in the J&K High Court in 2014. We got it stayed and ultimately it got repealed in 2018. We dismantled it. That was what we call as legislative jihad. So, there are many tentacles of this at the legislative level, at the executive level. The government of India, if it really understands that the de facto Muslim state still exists, it has to handle all these executive and legislative adventurism that has been done by the earlier state apparatus. While doing so, the people of the country will support government of India, and the people will also be educated, because until you take steps concrete steps,
Yeah.
at a nuanced level, people will not understand.
Right.
You have to take certain steps, like we demolished this legislative jihad, what we call as Roshni Act.
Yeah.
It was passed with 2/3 majority. People quickly took up the import of legislative act.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people would not understand. An act is a secular provision,
Yeah.
legislated by a secular institution. You can't even imagine that a secular institution has been used to give a communal piece of legislation,
Correct.
unless it is done away. Now, again, at the executive level, I did that press conference. I brought into being the chairman of Ekjut Jammu through our sources. Even the coalition partner BJP even didn't know about that executive order that was passed by Mehbooba Mufti on 14th Feb 2018,
Okay.
wherein she had clandestinely written to all the district magistrates, SSPs, DGPs, chief secretaries, and revenue administrations, divisional commissioners, and everybody who's involved in the administration of revenue management, land management, that if Muslims occupy lands in Jammu, you will not take any action against them. Suppose there is a court order for their eviction. Clear-cut directions had been issued in writing. I can show you the order, copy of the order also. Clear-cut directions had been given to the district SSPs not to provide police assistance for such evictions. And in the last provision, they say that if a Muslim engages in cow slaughter and bovine smuggling, you will not take any action against him. And the justification was given that these provisions of cow slaughter and bovine smuggling control regulation are being used against innocent Muslims. So that was the justification. I mean, so the entire legal framework for them, or the penal provisions, were suspended for a community which belonged to one particular religion, against doing two things: demographic invasion, which I say, capturing lands and settling there, and then cow slaughter and bovine smuggling. So I think so when, and even the coalition partner BJP pleaded ignorance, that we didn't know about this order. I did that. I was out of the government. I was not part of the government. I was not even a part of any political party. I got it, and the cabinet minister next day came out and did a press conference saying that we didn't know it. So this is how these people were operating. So these type of steps have to be taken by the government of India. That will ultimately educate the entire world also about the kind of narrative, and government of India will not have to do academic exercises or pump in resources of people to show that this is what we are dismantling there, or what we dismantle. And then Muslims have to be restrained from taking minority benefits. They have been getting these minority benefits as on date. There are more than 60 to 70 centrally sponsored schemes, and 4 lakh, 5 lakhs per individual in one scheme, scholarship schemes, and there are 60. So thousands and thousands of crores of rupees are being siphoned off illegally. I mean, they should book certain individuals under the Prevention of Corruption Act also, because you are choosing wrong beneficiaries. So I mean, these are certain steps that the government of India should take. People of the state will also come to know what they have achieved, and people of the country will also come to know what they have achieved. You can't have a Pakistan within the secular territory of India. You can't have it. It's a cancer. It was a cancer. And I think they have started the surgery and will take it to the logical conclusion.
What are some of the positive changes that you've seen since the revokement? I
think people are very happy, and what more positive thing can you expect that secularism has been reintroduced in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. We got political independence in 1947, but the J&K state was enslaved to Muslim hegemony. I mean, they have 5th August or 6th August, whatever you say, it was introduced on 5th August. We celebrate 5th August as a new Independence Day for the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So rule of law has to be re-established. These things have to be done. But then the bigul has been sounded that secularism will now rule the roost in the state of J&K. Now, at least the state as a political entity, the state apparatus in Jammu and Kashmir will not be built on communal lines now.
What role do you're a young working professional yourself. What role do youth, women, young working professionals play? What is the best contribution they can do going forward?
I think the youth can educate the entire nation, especially the youth of Jammu and Kashmir, about the positive impacts of abrogation of Article 370.
And how can they do that?
They can do it using, first they have to, the state has to take steps. They have to educate the people. In fact, the youth in Jammu and Kashmir is educated on these issues, and they have to create awareness, they have to spread information, they have to fight. I say they have to fight the de facto Muslim state. Whatever the symptoms, the remaining remnants of this Islamic state are left, they have to fight against them. And people in the youth in Jammu and Kashmir is very proactive, and you would see people understanding these nuanced things in a very crude manner, explaining. Everybody here knows what demographic invasion is. So I think they can start with fighting against these evils. They are doing so. We have a lot of support in the public, especially from the youth. They are participating in it. They are understanding the political processes. I think now it is the role of all of us, in fact the media also, entrepreneurs, the youth who are in the leadership position, to actually fight against these evils, so that we can have a society, a polity which is governed by rule of law and secularism, for which forms the core value. Youth of J&K is directly involved in this. You will see, if you track my timeline of, in fact, social media, I am talking about Facebook timeline, you will come to know how youth is involved in all these fights. We did so many public gatherings, more than 100 public gatherings from Lakhanpur to Banihal, entire Jammu province. That was arranged by the local population. We didn't even spend much resources in that. They were all participatory, everything. So that was a fight we collectively fought. So I think these things, and awareness is very important. I think media has a responsibility to project the right perspective, right narrative also, and I think that will
That's the way forward.
That's the way forward.
It's good to know that they are proactive,
yes.
though. That's really refreshing to know, actually, because I think
people in Jammu are proactive, and they are calling the problem by its real name.
Yeah.
Our problem in entire India, in fact entire world, in this context I say, we do not call the problem by its real name. We try to camouflage. So when you do not call the problem by its real name, you do not get a remedy. We, in the first instance, people in Jammu, and in fact from the platform of Ekjut Jammu, we in the first instance started calling this state of Jammu and Kashmir as an Islamic state, as a Muslim state, as a theocracy, and we explained it as to how it is functioning as a Muslim state. Mehbooba Mufti was the sitting chief minister. So when I did a press conference against her and we started this narrative, she wanted to arrest me, but she could not, because we had the public support and we were speaking the truth. So when you speak the truth, even the public and even the God also helps you. So I think that's the only way forward. You have to call the problem by its name, and this Islamic hegemony is not a problem which is specific to the state of J&K.
Now, the final question that I have for you is, if you could deliver a message to PM Modi and the central government, what would you say in 5 lines?
You have dismantled the de jure Islamic Republic of J&K. Now the de facto Islamic Republic of J&K has to be dismantled, and you have to take really fundamental steps in that direction. And 370 and 35A, we have to remember, should never be political issues. These were ideological issues, and these are issues the abrogation of which is a step ahead in nation building. Now no looking back. De facto Islamic state, de facto Muslim state has to be dismantled also, so that here people living in state of Jammu and Kashmir and also elsewhere in India should ensure that for times to come, for generations to come, we live in a secular India, we live in a peace loving in India, we live in an India where ideology as exclusive as Islamic fundamentalism should not exist, and all the necessary steps in that direction have to be taken. And like I was saying earlier, the demographic invasion here in J&K was state sponsored. You will see it in so many forms across the length and breadth of the country. For that also, the Prime Minister and the Home Minister should take steps, and ideologically they should understand things and respond back ideologically, and whatever is required to be done, that should be done, and in whatever language people understand, that language should be used. In fact, for using that language, I am on the hit list of Hizbul Mujahideen. There were reports that they have done also the recce and everything of our security deployment and also, and but we are fighting it. If we can fight this menace by remaining outside power, so by remaining in power and being in charge of the entire country, why can't a decisive battle be fought against these evils? That's the only message that I can give. And you have to call the problem by its name. The only message, because only if you call the problem by its name, solutions,
you'll get the correct solution.
Correct solutions. Great. Absolutely.
That's very well put. But congratulations on all of your work.
Thank you so much.
I can see your passion and energy throughout this entire interview. So I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure good things are there to come.
Of course, of course. We are fighting against so many things.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes our episode of NIJ. This is Priyanka Deo. Till next time, signing off.